There's a man in his late 60s sleeping in a recreational vehicle tonight, parked at the far end of a lot behind a shopping center, maybe 15 minutes from where you live. He worked for more than 40 years. He paid his taxes. He raised his kids, kept his nose clean, and did every single thing the country told him would add up to a comfortable retirement. And here he is, not on a fishing boat, not on a porch somewhere warm, in a parking lot, rationing the propane so it lasts the week. And here's the part that's hard to sit with. He isn't the exception. He's the leading edge of something much larger, and it's growing quietly, year after year, mostly out of sight. We were all handed the same picture of what retirement was supposed to look like. The gold watch, the paid-off house, the slower mornings you earned across a lifetime of showing up. For a long time, for a lot of people, that picture was real. But it's coming apart. And the real story here isn't about people who were reckless or lazy or made some catastrophic mistake. It's about people who did everything right, followed every rule exactly as it was written, and still ended up with nowhere to go. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly how that happens and why it's landing closer to your own front door than you'd ever expect. Because it starts with a promise, a specific promise this country made to the people who worked for it. And somewhere along the way, quietly, that promise got rewritten. Let's clear up the picture most people carry first. When you imagine an older person living in a vehicle, it's easy to assume there's a story behind it. A gambling problem, an addiction, money that got thrown away, or family that got burned one too many times. Sometimes that's true. But it is not the story that's growing, and it's not the story of the man in that parking lot. The fastest rising group of Americans falling into homelessness right now is people over the age of 50. Many of them are landing there for the very first time in their lives, in their 60s and 70s, after decades of stable housing, steady work, and never once missing rent. These aren't people with a lifetime of chaos behind them. These are retired nurses, former truck drivers, people who spent 30 years on a factory floor, people, in other words, who look a great deal like your own parents. And that's exactly why you don't see it. A retiree living in an RV doesn't read as homeless to the people driving past. They read as a traveler, a snowbird, someone enjoying the freedom of the open road when the truth is often closer to the opposite. An older adult sleeping in a sedan keeps the car clean and the windows just fogged enough, parks somewhere respectable, and blends right into the scenery of ordinary retirement. The official counts miss them almost entirely because those counts are built to find people on the street, not people tucked into a vehicle that looks like a choice. So the real number of older Americans living this way is far larger than any report will ever tell you, and it climbs every year in near silence, hidden inside a version of retirement that from a distance can look almost peaceful. So if this isn't a story about bad choices, what is it a story about? Here's why that matters. Because if the cause isn't personal, then it isn't rare, and it isn't finished. It's a pattern, and a pattern can keep spreading. Start with the thing almost everyone underestimates, which is how thin the ground under a comfortable retirement has slowly become. For most of the last century, a secure retirement stood on 3 legs: a pension from your employer, Social Security from the government, and whatever you managed to save on your own. 3 legs holding up 1 stool. It wasn't luxurious, but it held. Now look at what happened to each of those legs, one at a time, because that's where this whole thing lives. The first leg was the pension, and it's the one most people don't realize is nearly gone. A generation ago, a huge share of workers could expect a guaranteed monthly check from the company they gave their career to. A defined benefit. You put in the years, and the company owed you an income for life. That arrangement has quietly disappeared. Over the last few decades, most employers traded the pension for a retirement account you fund yourself, one that rises and falls with the market and comes with no guarantee at all. On paper, it was framed as giving workers more control. In practice, it moved the entire risk of growing old off the company's books and onto yours. The pension didn't fail the man in the parking lot. It was simply taken off the table years before he reached the finish line, and nobody handed him a replacement. If you're anywhere near retirement age, has your own math started to feel different than what you were promised when you were younger? Drop it in the comments. I'm genuinely curious how many people are quietly feeling this shift. Now the second leg, Social Security. And here's what gets buried in every conversation about it. Social Security was never designed to be someone's entire income. It was built to be one piece of that three-legged stool, replacing only a portion of what you used to earn, roughly 40% for an average worker. It was a floor, not a foundation. But once the pension vanished, tens of millions of people arrived at retirement with Social Security as the only leg still standing. And you cannot balance a stool on one leg. For a great many retirees, that monthly check now has to cover everything: rent, food, medicine, insurance, the car, and it simply doesn't stretch that far. In many parts of the country, an average Social Security check doesn't even cover the average rent before a single other bill is paid. That's not a story about someone spending carelessly. That's arithmetic. And the arithmetic doesn't work. Which brings us to the third leg, the savings. This is the one where people are hardest on themselves and where they deserve it the least. The advice was always the same: just save. Put a little aside every month and let it grow, and millions of people tried. But here's what that advice quietly ignored. For decades, wages barely moved while the cost of nearly everything, housing, healthcare, raising children, education, climbed and climbed. When you spend 30 years covering rising costs on a paycheck that isn't rising with them, there is nothing left at the end of the month to set aside, no matter how disciplined you are. A large share of Americans reach their 60s with almost nothing saved for retirement, not because they didn't understand the assignment, because the math of their working life never left room to complete it. That's not a personal failing, it's a structural one, repeated tens of millions of times. And there's a fourth pressure that steadily eats whatever margin is left, which is the cost of simply getting older in America. Healthcare doesn't get cheaper with age. It gets more expensive right as income stops growing. Even with Medicare, the gaps are real. Premiums, co-pays, the medications that aren't fully covered, the dental and vision and hearing care that often aren't covered at all, and the long-term care that can cost more in a single month than most people earn in a year. One serious illness, one long hospital stay, one diagnosis that requires an expensive drug for the rest of your life, and a retirement that was barely balanced tips over for good. For a lot of older Americans, it wasn't a spending spree that emptied the account. It was a body doing what bodies eventually do, meeting a system that charges the most to the people with the least ability to absorb it. So put those three together: the pension, gone. Social Security, never meant to carry the whole weight. Savings, impossible to build on a flat wage against rising costs. That's the ground a whole generation is now trying to retire on. And it's why one bad turn is all it takes. Because here's how fast it actually happens, and it almost never looks the way people picture it. It's rarely a slow slide. It's usually one shock, arriving late, when there's no time left to recover from it. Picture someone at 63, housing stable, getting by, maybe a little behind, but managing. Then one thing breaks. A layoff 2 years before they plan to stop working. A diagnosis and a stack of medical bills. The death of a spouse, which in an instant cuts a 2-income household down to one Social Security check, while the rent stays exactly the same. Any one of these, at that age, can be the push. And here's the cruel part, waiting on the other side of it. When a younger person loses a job, they can usually find another. When someone in their mid-60s loses a job, the door often just doesn't open again. Employers look at the gray hair and quietly pass, and the person who did everything right spends months sending out applications into a silence that never answers. The fall isn't slow. It's a single step off a ledge that used to have a railing. The loss of a spouse deserves its own moment here because it's one of the most common triggers and one of the most brutal. For a couple, retirement often only works because two incomes are stacked together, two Social Security checks or a pension plus a check, sharing one rent between them. When one partner dies, the household doesn't just lose a person, it loses an income, sometimes more than half of it, overnight. The rent doesn't shrink to match. The bills don't pause for grief. The survivor, often a woman in her 70s who outlived her husband, is left carrying a cost built for two people on the income of one at the exact moment she has the least strength to fight it. For a frightening number of older women, widowhood is not only the loss of a partner, it's the event that quietly ends their housing. If this is putting words to something you've been feeling or watching happen to someone you love, a like genuinely helps more people find it. Takes 1 second. And now we reach the part that keeps them there, because once an older adult loses stable housing, the way back is almost sealed off. Think about what it actually takes to rent a place today. First month, last month, a security deposit, a credit check, proof that your income is 3 times the rent. For someone living on a fixed check that barely covers a single month's rent, those upfront costs are a wall they cannot climb. And they can't do what a younger person might, which is work extra hours to rebuild, because the job market has closed its door and their body may not allow it anyway. So a fixed income that was always tight becomes a trap with no exit. There's a bitter phrase economists use for this: the cost of being poor. The way that having less money makes everything more expensive, from the interest you pay to the deposits you can't cover to the bulk goods you can't buy. For an older adult with no cushion, that cost isn't an inconvenience, it's a locked gate. And the door a younger person would lean on, the option to simply earn their way back, is mostly closed to them. It isn't that older adults won't work. Many desperately want to and try. It's that a gap on a resume at 64 reads very differently than one at 34. And employers, whatever they'd admit out loud, tend to look past the applicant with gray hair for the one they picture staying longer. Add a body that may no longer handle a physical job it once did without a second thought, and the path that rescued people all through their working years, just pick up more hours, just find another job, narrows down to almost nothing. The one tool that used to fix a money problem gets taken out of their hands at the exact moment they need it most. And it reaches even the people who thought they'd done the one thing that would keep them safe, which is pay off the house. Here's something that genuinely surprises people. Owning your home outright is not the fortress it used to be. The mortgage may be gone, but the property taxes never are. And in a lot of places, they've climbed to a point where they alone can run to hundreds or even $1,000 a month. Add insurance, which keeps rising, add utilities, add the repairs an aging house demands, and a retiree on a fixed income can be taxed and billed right out of a home. They technically own free and clear. They didn't lose the house to a bank. They lost it to the ongoing cost of simply keeping it on an income that stopped growing years ago. That's not a flaw in how they planned. It's a shift in what a paid-off home even means now. So why a vehicle specifically? Why the RV, the van, the car, instead of some other option? Because for a lot of older adults, the vehicle is the last thing they still own outright, and it does 2 jobs a shelter never could. It keeps them mobile, which means it keeps them near their doctor, their pharmacy, the town they know, and the people who know them. and it lets them hold onto a shred of the one thing this whole situation strips away, which is dignity. A space that is theirs. A door they can close. A home that still looks a little like a home, but it comes with a trap of its own. A vehicle is a machine, and machines break. When the transmission goes, or the engine finally quits, an older adult doesn't just face a repair bill they can't pay. They face losing their home and their transportation in the very same afternoon with no way to fix either one. The thing keeping them afloat is always one breakdown away from taking everything down with it when it sinks. Now, let's talk about what actually created this, because none of it happened by accident. It's tempting to look at millions of older Americans in this position and reach for the easy explanation that a whole generation somehow got careless all at once. But that isn't what the pattern shows. When the same outcome lands on tens of millions of people who lived completely different lives, the cause isn't in their character. It's in the structure they all shared. The decision to move retirement risk from employers onto individual workers, that was a choice. Decades of wages failing to keep pace with the cost of living, that was a series of choices. A housing market that was allowed to become unaffordable in city after city, choice after choice. A retirement system quietly rebuilt to assume everyone could save, in an economy that made saving impossible for a huge share of the people it assumed it of. These weren't natural disasters. They were policies, with names and dates and predictable consequences. And the man in the parking lot is one of those consequences, living it out one ration tank of propane at a time. Let's make this concrete, because the numbers start to feel abstract until you sit inside a single day of it. Picture a woman, 69, a retired home health aide who spent her whole career taking care of other people. She lives in a small, older RV now, and her day is a series of quiet calculations. Where to park tonight so nobody knocks on the window? Which grocery store lot lets her stay a few hours without trouble? How to make the Social Security check last the full month when the last week always seems to arrive before the money does. She keeps herself clean and put together because she's learned that looking like you're struggling invites the wrong kind of attention. And the hardest part, the part that costs her the most, is the phone calls with her kids and grandkids, where she keeps her voice bright and steady and never quite tells them the whole truth, because she doesn't want to be a burden and she can't bear their worry. She spent 40 years being the one who took care of everyone. Now, she rations propane and hides it from the people she loves. That's not a story from some hard-luck corner of the country you'll never visit. For a fast-growing number of Americans, that's just a Tuesday. And she isn't only one person. Nearby, in the same lot on a different night, there's a couple in their 70s who worked their whole lives and now share a small trailer, splitting the propane and the worry between them, grateful at least to still have each other. A few spaces over, a widower who used to own a home 2 towns away sits with a thermos of coffee running the same numbers she is. They rarely speak to one another, but they recognize each other instantly because they're all wearing the same careful composure, the same practiced normal. A whole generation that did everything right, parked side by side in the dark, keeping up appearances for an audience that isn't even watching. And here's where most people assume there's a safety net waiting, some program that catches an elderly person before it comes to this. And in a few places, in a small way, something does. There are senior housing programs, subsidized apartments meant for exactly this situation. The problem is scale, and it's not close. The waiting lists for affordable senior housing in much of the country stretch not for weeks but for years, so long that some people age out of the wait entirely, needing the help now and being told to check back long after now has passed. There are also a handful of safe parking programs, designated lots where an older adult can sleep in a vehicle without fear of a ticket or a tow, sometimes with a bathroom and someone whose job is to help them find their footing. Where they exist, they help. But they exist in almost no places, and they cover a tiny fraction of the need. So the honest answer is that for most older Americans in this situation, the safety net they assumed was under them was quietly cut down to almost nothing years ago, and no one told them till they reached out a hand and found it wasn't there. So let's go back to that parking lot and the man in the RV rationing his propane 15 minutes from where you live. From the outside, it's easy to look at him and assume he must have done something wrong to end up there. He didn't. He did everything a person was told to do. He worked the decades, paid what he owed, and kept his end of a bargain the other side stopped honoring. He isn't a story about personal failure. He's a story about a deal that was rewritten while millions of people were still holding up their end of it, believing the terms would be there when they arrived. These are not people who fell through the cracks. They're people the ground was quietly pulled out from under, one leg of the stool at a time. And it will keep growing for a simple reason. As long as retirement depends on a pension that no longer exists for most workers, as long as it leans on a social security check never built to carry the whole load, as long as a lifetime of flat wages leaves nothing to save and a paid-off house can still be taxed out from under you, more people who did everything right will keep arriving at old age with nowhere to land. Whether that stays true, whether we decide that working for 40 years should still buy you a roof at the end of it, is not a law of nature. It's a choice, and it's one this country hasn't made yet. So I'll leave you with the honest version of the question, the one worth sitting with. If you did everything you were told to do, worked the years, paid what you owed, followed every rule as it was written, do you believe the retirement you were promised will actually be there when you reach it? Be honest. Drop your answer below. I actually read them.